The NBA has released all schedules for NBA teams, and the Chicago Bulls look like they may have a tough schedule ahead of them. But the question is, could the Chicago Bulls have a bad start to the season with their new upcoming schedule? Y'all know we're going to talk about it, break it down, but you know you got to hear the music first.
Cognac. Gang.
Shy Boys Podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on today's daily episode. If you're tuned in with me today, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. Big shout out to Bulls Nation. The support here has been tremendous. We hope it continues. Thank y'all very much. But now we get on to the topic for the day. Now, we was excited. You know what I'm saying? And anxious just to see what type of schedule that the NBA was going to put out there for the Chicago Bulls. We know that the Chicago Bulls had many things to consider, or at least the NBA had many things to consider when constructing this schedule for the Chicago Bulls. We talked about the additions of Josh Giddey. You bring in Chris Duarte. You bring in Jalen Smith. You're trying to see what you can get out of these young players. You go ahead and you draft Montes Buzelis. And you see what now, you know what I'm saying? You see you're working with something that's a little bit decent, but you still got to finish molding what the team will actually look like. And the NBA released that schedule, and it's a tough one. But I want to go ahead and mention some notable games for those that are wondering what the schedule will look like and why it could possibly bring the Chicago Bulls some troubles early on in the season. It could be a frustrating one, or it can be one that surprises us and be one that turns out to be fantastic, or at least acceptable, to not let us lose all our hair, or if you like, you ain't got no hair, to where you just absolutely just lose your mind. It's all good. But some notable games, the Chicago Bulls, they start off the preseason versus the Cleveland Cavaliers on October 8th. One thing that the Chicago Bulls is going to do when the season starts is they are going to start the season off on October 23rd versus the New Orleans Pelicans. And then if you're wondering when we're going to see Alex Caruso return to the United Center, that's going to take place on October 26th. And I mentioned one of these games because I feel like this young player, he got to see some smoke, and somebody got to step up to the plate. Montes Buzelis' first game versus the Atlanta Hawks. Zachary Richardshire. Yeah, we heard you. We seen you kind of ducking in summer league, but hey, those games don't matter. But now when the season starts, they are going to matter. Ladies and gentlemen, that game is going to take place on November 9th. Then we wondering when Cornrow Kobe will return to the United Center. We know DeMar DeRozan has left the Chicago Bulls as a free agent, went on over there and it was sent to Sacramento with the help of the Chicago Bulls with executing a sign and trade to where the Chicago Bulls got themselves to 2 second-round picks and Chris Duarte in that trade, you know, along and sending DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento. That game is going to take place on January 12th. So just to let you guys know, Alex Caruso is coming back October 26th. DeMar DeRozan is going to come back in 2025, January 12th. And Montes Buzelis, he might get to go out there and do something versus the number 1 overall pick. But hey, we shall see. Now, when we talk about what could it really, really look like for the Chicago Bulls, I know that some of us have the expectations that this young team has a lot of promise, and I understand it to a degree. And I understand why some fans believe that the Chicago Bulls could possibly overachieve. And I'm with that side of the argument. I understand it from that degree. This is not what we're going to really, really dive into today. But I understand that side of the argument when you say, hey, we got Josh Giddey. We looking at the step forwards from Kobe White. We looking at the additions of Ayo Dosunmu. We hoping that Patrick Williams finally break out. We just picked up Jalen Smith, somebody that's a more athletic defensive big and can give you something, you know, similar to what Nikola Vucevic. You know what I'm saying? You got a lot of pieces. Lonzo Ball is coming back, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a lot of what ifs, ladies and gentlemen. It's a lot of what ifs. And sometimes these what ifs leads us to go ahead and purchasing a fifth and we be drunk. So that's what it can really turn into if we thinking about that in this regards. But when we talk about the schedule itself, you know what I'm saying, without trying to put too many ifs in it, we look at the Chicago Bulls schedule and say, hey, the Chicago Bulls open up this schedule, ladies and gentlemen, with 11 of their first 20 games versus teams that made the playoffs last season, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, 11 of the first 20 games are against teams that made the playoffs last season. So this is not an easy route when we talk about the schedule for the Chicago Bulls. They're seeing Orlando a couple times. They're seeing Milwaukee, New York, the Cavs a couple times. They are seeing the Timberwolves, you know what I'm saying, the Dallas Mavericks, all within this 20 game, span, just to see if the Chicago Bulls can get off to a decent start. And even then, when we talk about and look at this schedule, we looking at some teams who didn't make it last year, but could potentially be either in it or fighting for a playoff spot. That one of those teams is the Memphis Grizzlies. The Chicago Bulls within those first 20 games will see the Memphis Grizzlies, I believe, at two times. Believe it is two times, and they should be back. They should be back. Ja Morant is coming back, and these young fellas are getting their leader and their superstar player to come back to the team. And I believe this young player got a lot to prove for as much smoke as he has been receiving these past few years, and is warranted. He deserved the smoke, but it looks like this young fella is ready to let people know who he is and reintroduce himself as Ja. Let people know. Another team that's on the schedule within the first 20 games is the Houston Rockets. And I'm not saying that the Houston Rockets are going to make the playoffs, but I can guarantee that these guys are going to be much improved. They're going to go ahead and get Alperen Sengun back into the lineup. Now, you still got other guys that they acquired over there for this upcoming season, and they are very well much improved. They're young players, you know what I'm saying? Tyrese and Jabari Smith, these guys, and Jalen Green are expected to take a step forward. We shall see, but I can guarantee that ain't gonna be no easy game because these guys know how meaningful it is to win ball games, especially when you're in the Western Conference. And the news and the rumors that have been surrounding the Houston Rockets this past offseason, especially with acquiring about multiple guys that are out there to try to bring them onto their team. We know that the Houston Rockets are right now interested in winning more games than losing. So that's gonna be a tough one. Then another team that's on the list, some people may say, hey, we ain't worried about them, but I would say we should keep them on our radar. And to keep it a buck with you, I don't really want to mention it, but we got to keep it a buck and we can't hide it. That's Detroit Pistons. These guys got a lot of young talent. They just got a new young coach over there, and they got a lot of guys, you know what I'm saying? That's many believe that they are prepared and ready to step up, especially in Cade Cunningham and then in Jalen Duran, to where some superstars or good players within the NBA are saying that he is on the verge of becoming a superstar. So when you look at what the Detroit Pistons have, that's going to be another tough matchup. And when we continue to look at the schedule for what it really is, 12 out of the 20 games, 12 out of the first 20 games for the Chicago Bulls are on the road, ladies and gentlemen. That means there are only 8 games at home. The Chicago Bulls will have to put emphasis on protecting home court if they do not want to get scrutinized by Shy Bulls podcast. That's just what it's going to be. But we do understand what we're working with, but that's still tough. You know what I'm saying? And then when you look about when you look at it and then you think about it, in those first 20 games, the Chicago Bulls have 3 back-to-backs that can cause or signal disaster. That could very well turn into disaster And if we're talking about how the Chicago Bulls started last season, in their first 20 games, they started out 6-14. That's in year 2023 into the 2024 year. And then in 2022 to 2023, in the first 20 games, the Chicago Bulls started out 9-11. So not necessarily great starts. Maybe you say last year was the worst of the last, of the recent years, going 6-14, but then looking at the previous year and going 9-11, it still doesn't provide you with much confidence simply because there's no more DeMar DeRozan. There's no more Alex Caruso. There's no more Andre Drummond. So it's really, really something that we have to really start analyzing and being logical and being real about it. I know that we have an abundance of talent, and I'm very, very supportive of it and happy about it. But it leaves a lot of questions on how many games the Bulls could actually win this season. It really does. And when we talk about, all the games that we mentioned, the notable games when our guys are going to return, when we talk about the Chicago Bulls opening up their first 20 games, 11 of those 20 games is going to be against some playoff teams, and then 12 out of the 20 games are going to be on the road, and then 3 back-to-back slated in the first 20 games. It can cause for some tough times for the Chicago Bulls. I gotta keep it a buck with y'all. It can cause for some tough times for our Chicago Bulls. But this is what we asked for. That's all I really gotta say. We could be as optimistic as we can be, but this young squad is what we absolutely asked for. And if they traded Zach LaVine away, it could look a lot worse because this could absolutely be the Zach LaVine show, to where Zach LaVine, he's going out there averaging 28 points, maybe 28 to 30 points, putting on a show, getting a couple 35, 40-point games here and there throughout these 20-point games. But if you ain't getting a dub, what does it mean? What does it mean? If you're not getting the dubs, what does it mean? And you can't forget about the young guys. Are these young players ready to take these steps forward? Is the biggest question. There's no more DeMar DeRozan that these young players can lean on. Once Zach LaVine went down after his 25 games this past season, the young players leaned on DeMar DeRozan a lot. Kobe White stepped up, tried to support him. Nikola Vucevic was Nikola Vucevic, and tried to support him. Ayo Dosunmu came around and pretty much was holding it up. But there was still questions out there regarding De La Terry. There were still questions out there regarding Patrick Williams. We still didn't really know what we was going to get out of Julian Phillips. We was wondering if Orlap Bitim was even going to see minutes and, come up and see an abundance of minutes and be able to produce. We were still trying to figure this whole thing out. And then Alex Caruso, we was just trying to hope the man didn't get hurt for how hard he played for us. There's no more DeMar DeRozan to close these games. There's none of that stuff, because we know that the past few years that the Chicago Bulls, a lot of their games came down to the clutch. And who was the king of the clutch? He's gone. Cornrow Kobe DeMar DeRozan, the king of the fourth, is gone. You don't have that anymore. Can Zach LaVine step in and fill that role for the time being? Or will that be, do you trust one of these young guys to step up and be like that? I don't know. How much trust do we really, really have in Kobe White, Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, and Josh Giddey? Josh Giddey is coming off from OKC to where he was dealing with some things. Like I'm confident that Josh Giddey is going to provide the Chicago Bulls with solid statistics. I really, really firmly believe that at a minimum, that Josh Giddey is going to have a stat line that's something similar or around 18, 7, and 8. I really believe that. But is it going to be good enough to put Dubs in the win column? Will Kobe White continue his ascension up into new heights? 19 points last year. Can he go up? Because the Bulls is going to need him. Ayo Dosunmu, can he rise up? Because the Bulls are going to need him. Patrick Williams, will you break out? No DeMar DeRozan to make excuses for you anymore. So how much trust do we have in these young guys right now? Me personally, when I came out, I said early on, just looking at it, I said the Bulls could win about 35 games. I think that's a reasonable number. 30 to 35 games, I think, is a reasonable number. And I also thought that the Bulls had a strong chance of being a play-in contender. I know it sounds foolish, but those are now expectations for some teams to kind of calculate success, at least from my point of view. But the bigger question is, who's now going to close these games? These young Bulls are going to play their ass off. I truly believe these young Bulls are going to play hard every single night. And it's going to come down to those final minutes. Do we trust Zach LaVine to close these games? This is a guy that requested a trade. We know there's no trade market for him right now. Is that something he gets into so he can up and elevate his trade value? Me personally, I think Zach LaVine can't afford to have a bad start to the season. That's just me personally. But can he close the game? Is the bigger question. And are guys ready to elevate? Is another question. I just talked about Kobe, Pat, Ayo, and Josh Giddey. DeMar DeRozan is gone. Last year, he accounted for 24 points. Alex Caruso is gone. Last year, he accounted for 10 points. Are these young players ready to fill that void? Are they ready to fill that void? We shall see. We shall see. I'm still going to ride with my Chicago Bulls and say that they can win between 30 and 35 games and can potentially push for a play-in spot. I'm really going to ride on that because I think that it's still going to be more teams that are going to be in a Cooper Flag sweepstakes. And as long as the Chicago Bulls protect the top 10 pick and make sure that it's within the top 10 pick, and with the schedule where it's looking like, that's where they're going to be at. You know what I'm saying? So what's going to come out of that? But nonetheless, they very well could start this season off bad. They very well could. Or they can come out and shock the world. I'm just saying. I know that's a stretch. Y'all probably say I'm glazing, but they very well could come out and shock the world. The first 3 games are brutal. Like, if we keeping it a buck and we looking at it for what it is, the first 3 games to the season are brutal, y'all. We talking about New Orleans, Milwaukee, OKC. The first 5 games are brutal. New Orleans, Milwaukee, OKC, the Grizzlies, and Orlando in your first 5 games. Then you go against the lowly Brooklyn. Then you go against the lowly Utah Jazz. Or, they just pay marketing. How bad is it going to be? We shall find out soon when October rolls around. It's just going to be an interesting one. Can the Chicago Bulls steal some games? It's going to be the bigger question. Maybe, maybe not. We shall see. But hey, y'all let me know. Let me know. And I got a question for you all. How many games y'all think the Chicago Bulls are going to win this season? I got between 30 and 35. Pushing for a play-in spot because they could potentially go over that and surprise some people. I'm gonna leave that surprise to people open. You know what I'm saying? Simply because they are in the Eastern Conference. When you talk about certain teams, when it comes to injuries or how they play, I know the Milwaukee Bucks have Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I believe the Chicago Bulls could steal some games over there because it seems like their chemistry is not all the way down packed, and Giannis is constantly dealing with injuries. Then we talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. We kind of always play them tough, and then they brought back pretty much the same team, so we shall see. Within those first few games, is the Grizzlies ready to take that next step? And it's a lot of what ifs, but that's why we talk about it. How many games do you guys really think the Chicago Bulls could win? Let me know in the comment box below. And that's it. Go ahead, leave the rest of your thoughts down below. Let's chop it up and talk about this topic. I find it very, very interesting. and something that we should be really, really looking forward to just to discuss, because this is what we asked for. This is what we asked for. A younger, more athletic team that's going to run up and down the court, that's going to develop some young talent and try to see if we can, you know what I'm saying, change up the mood from what's been going on the last few years. But that's it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Shy Boys Podcast. Make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well before you get up out of here. And I'm going to just leave it like this. Thank you so much, Boys Nation. Always see red, and you already know I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.
Cognac. Gang.